So Audi, have you been spending too much time with Nissan? I think you've forgotten how to do interior lights. What is this? What is this supposed to be? There's no reading lights in here. It's just this horrible soft glow, which is practically useless. Well, welcome back on this lovely fine day. Well, it's overcast, rain, then it's sun, and it's back to overcast and rain again. It can't make up its mind what it's doing, much like this Q3 over here. Well, it looks to me like some poor Audi A3 just caught crosser's disease, when every car in your lineup has to have an SUV edition. It's just starting to get a bit old now. I mean, I understood with the Q7. I could even forgive them the Q5, that was okay. But the Q3, this is a step too far. But guess what's even more absurd? This isn't a four-wheel drive Quattro edition. You might be left with the same question I do. What's the point of this? Sadly, I'm incapable of delving into the psyche of people that buy small crossers, so I don't really have any idea. Just gonna have to try my best to figure it out. Well, I'll tell you, it isn't luggage space, because it's got about as much as the average A3 does. And although it's enough for most applications, it's not the sort of space you're going to need for an adventure holiday or a hiking expedition. And anything larger than a handbag dog is not going to be comfortable back here. So that isn't it. So what have we got here? Well, the Volkswagen keys had a slight update. It's not quite as square as it used to be. It's now a little bit of a funny, odd, non-uniform shape. But it still does the same thing. And it still clicks up like the old one did. Not really much of a difference, if you ask me. Same 2-litre TDI engine that is very familiar to me by now. And it's got the same kind of feel to it that most other Volkswagen products do. The clutch feels about the same. The gearbox and the way the gear shifter feels is exactly the same as your usual Volkswagen product. It's very much just like anything else. I might as well be driving an Octavia or a Golf or anything else about this size and I would get the same feel. So let's take a look at the interior. Sorry about the shadows. You'll notice on here we've got this nice silvery titanium finish, which I quite like in cars. I tend to find it gives a nice classy finish. The buttons are modern Audi, not the old school one, which is fine. I quite like that too. Though I wish they would change that setting. And then of course, you know, you've got your door pocket, which is nicely sized, plenty of space in it. The seats are unfortunately manual, but you can have everything. The bonnet release is actually on the driver's side, which I approve of. Seats themselves being cloth is, well, at least it's not bad cloth and it is actually comfortable. This is exactly what I've come to expect from a modern Volkswagen product these days. The lights are in the usual place. The steering wheel is chunky but nice to hold in the hand. The switches are minimalistic and they're all slightly different shapes, so you tend to know where you are without looking at them. The center dials are nice and legible with the infotainment system in the middle. It's got the screen in here, but sadly this one doesn't go up and down, it just sits fixed in place. You know, you can't have everything. Besides, the motorized system is just another thing to go wrong, I guess. Moving down the way, the vents are classy-ish, and the silverish colour carries on all the way across the dashboard. Again, a nice design philosophy. It's elegant, classy, even if a little boring by now. This I can't understand. All these modern stereo systems seem to be going for this very minimalistic finish with the buttons and dials and not much else. I kind of miss the setup of old, but then again I'm getting older and I suppose nostalgia kicks in and all that. Moving down the way, the climate control system is different from a lot of the ones I've looked at recently, and I quite like its design. I must say I'm growing to like it the longer I look at it. Moving down the way, there's not really much of a cubby hole in here. I guess you could store pens in it and that's about it. Kind of unfortunate. There's not a lot of storage space in this vehicle. Typical Volkswagen Audi affair. Gear knob, I mean, does the job. And it's nice and direct. You know which gear you're in and you know when. There's no quibbles about it. It's kind of the opposite of SsangYong by this point. If you haven't watched the SsangYong videos, that'll give you a laugh. Alright, moving back the way. This thing has the e-brake, which I must admit I'm not a huge fan of because they tend to cause more problems than they fix. But it's here anyway. 2 cup holders. The 12-volt socket has an interesting cover on it. Now I get that, especially with it facing up the way. You don't want things falling in it. And then back from there, you've got your usual affair kind of storage area here, except for the fact that it doesn't really have a separate compartment. There's just the one piece, and it's kind of shallow. Like I said, there's not a lot of storage space in this thing. Speaking of storage space, let's have a little look at this glove box then, shall we? It's just tiny. I'm not quite understanding what you're up to with this Audi, but there's no storage space anywhere in this car, and it's getting on my nerves. So the rear door cards follow the same aesthetic as the front ones, almost exactly, which is nice to see considering I've seen some cars recently that just don't. But anyway, the legroom's okay for a small A3 sized vehicle, I guess. This hard back is kind of good, except for the fact there's no pockets in it. The 12-volt socket is kind of, it looks like an afterthought. Doesn't look like it was designed to sit in with anything, and I'm not sure about these vents being so high up. I get it, you don't want them getting kicked or broken, but it just looks a bit strange. For Audi, I'm very disappointed with the quality of these seats. There's no central armrest, and yes, it's a nice enough material, but it doesn't look particularly comfortable. Seats do have a 60-40 split, which is good. I believe for a while there that Volkswagen and Audi were offering that as an optional extra. You had to pay extra for, which I just thought was absurd. Well, maybe it's just that simple. Maybe being higher up and having a more commanding view, and generally feeling like you're driving something larger than you actually are, might be just the only selling points that people need. Couple that with the efficiency and the familiarity of a Volkswagen product, and I think we have our award-winning formula. It's not one I would go for, but I'm starting to understand. I am, however, getting concerned that perhaps Volkswagen Group are creating too many similar cars. This may come back to bite them later, where Volkswagen products get devalued just because there's so much out there on the market. You know, market saturation and all that. Because really, it's not that much dissimilar to the A3. Are they really attracting a new buyer segment with this? Or are they just trying to play fashionable? Either way, I guess time will tell. And that's the end of another video, so hopefully you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, like and subscribe. If you didn't, I've probably got something for you somewhere. I do release a video every single week, so have a look at some of the other bits and pieces that I've done. I've got quite a few videos in the back catalogue by now. Hopefully we'll have some more imports soon if I'm very lucky. But anyway, until next time, look after yourselves.